For 99% of the population, the reason you are not losing weight is not because you have a slow metabolism. For 99% of the population, the reason you are losing weight is because you're not doing the things that I mentioned in this video. And if you do the things that I mentioned in this video, it's going to boost your metabolism and you're going to be able to lose weight. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be debunking the myth that the reason you're unable to lose weight is because you have a slow metabolism. But before I start, if you enjoyed these types of videos, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. Now on to the topic at hand. A lot of people still buy into the myth that the reason they're unable to lose weight is because they have a slow metabolism, and that just isn't the case. And in order to demonstrate why that isn't the case, I'm going to be breaking this video down into several different topics, and if there's a particular reason that interests you, I will also be including a list of all the reasons in the timestamps in the description. So if you don't want to watch the entire video, you can go ahead, look in the description, and skip ahead to the section that you want to watch. The first reason why you are not losing weight is because you are eating too many calories. Calories in versus calories out is going to be what matters when it comes to weight loss. When it comes to weight loss, roughly 3,500 calories is in 1 pound of fat. So if you are in a caloric deficit of 3,500 calories, that will equate to 1 pound of fat lost. How exactly is that going to look in practice? Well, let's say you are on a 500 calorie deficit per day. 500 calories per day times 7 days per week equals 3,500 calories over the course of a week. So if you are in a 500 calorie deficit per day, over the course of a week, that is going to equate to 1 pound of fat loss per week. Another reason why you may not be losing weight is the opposite. You are eating too few calories. A lot of you might be confused thinking, well, you just said I was eating too many calories, so how could eating too few calories be the reason why I'm not losing weight? And the reason is simple. First of all, when you do a severe caloric restriction, your body is going to want to conserve energy, and it's going to conserve energy by lowering your resting metabolic rate. Aside from lowering your resting metabolic rate, it's also going to make your body produce the hormone ghrelin. Ghrelin, if you remember from a few weeks ago, is your hunger hormone. And when your body secretes ghrelin, what happens is you are going to start craving really high calorie dense foods because your body wants to get more energy. And in order to get more energy, it is going to crave higher calorie foods because energy and calories are the same thing. You get energy from calories. So if you go on a severe diet where you are restricting your calories to an insane amount, what's going to happen is you are going to secrete ghrelin and you're going to want to crave all of these really unhealthy and high calorie dense foods. And what's going to happen is even though you may be able to do an extreme calorie restriction for a month, 2, maybe 3 months if you're lucky, eventually the ghrelin is going to take over and it's going to cause you to go out on a binge. That is why a lot of people who do these extreme weight cuts, like you see on The Biggest Loser, they end up putting all the weight back on because as soon as they go back to normal life, they just end up going on this binge because they're craving all of these high calorie dense foods because of the extreme calorie restriction that they were just on. So if you do want to lose weight, you don't want to eat too many calories, but you also don't want to go on a severe calorie restriction. You want to find a good balance, whether that be 250 calorie deficit, a 500 calorie deficit. You need to see what works for you. The heavier you are, the bigger the deficit you can get away with, because if you are at a really heavy weight, let's say you're 500 or 600 pounds, you can consume 3,000, 4,000 calories and still lose weight. If you're already pretty close to your goal weight and you don't have a lot of weight to lose, you don't want to go on too high of a calorie restriction. Ideally, the closer you are to your goal weight, the smaller the deficit should be, because the smaller the deficit, the easier it's going to be to sustain that type of a diet. And if your main objective is to lose weight over the long run, then you want to follow a diet that you can sustain for life, because if you can't sustain it, then your weight loss is only going to be temporary. And if you want permanent change, then you need sustainability in your diet. Another reason why a lot of people don't lose weight is because they're not drinking enough water. A lot of people, they end up confusing their thirst signals with their hunger signals. So what happens is their body is thirsty and they mix up that signal thinking it is hunger, and they end up grabbing food instead of drinking water, which is what they actually need. And if you know anything about nutrition, you know that water has 0 calories and food has calories. So if you're not consuming water and you're mistaking your thirst signal for your hunger signals, then instead of consuming water that has 0 calories, you're going to opt in for food that has more calories, and by consuming calories, it will make it easier for you to be in a calorie surplus. So if you consume an adequate amount of water, then you won't end up mistaking those signals because you're going to be properly hydrated throughout the day. And if you don't mistake those signals, then you will eat when you are actually hungry and not when your body is thirsty and you're confusing that signal for hunger. Another reason why you are not losing weight is going to be that you are not consuming an adequate amount of protein. The thing with protein is going to be a lot more satiating than something like carbohydrates. So if you consume more protein, it's going to keep you fuller for longer. And because it's keeping you fuller for longer, it's going to prevent you from doing things like snacking throughout the day. Another reason why it's very beneficial to incorporate more protein on your diet is it has a higher thermic effect. When you look at protein versus carbohydrates versus fats, the thermic effect of protein is roughly 20 to 30%, the thermic effect of carbohydrates is roughly 10 to 15%, and the thermic effect of fat is less than 3%, or around 3%. It's somewhere in that range. What that means is that for every calorie of protein, 20 to 30% of that calorie is being used during the digestive process. When it comes to carbohydrates, for every 1 calorie of carbohydrate you're consuming, 10 to 15% of that calorie is being used during the digestive process. And with fat, for every 1 calorie of fat that you consume, 3% or less of that fat is going to be used during the digestive process. So because there is a higher thermic effect with protein, that means that the amount of calories that is actually going to be stored by your body is going to be less than that of carbohydrates and fat. It's going to be roughly half of that. So if you are consuming 1,000 calories of protein versus 1,000 calories of carbohydrates, out of that 1,000, you're really only taking in anywhere from 700 to 800 because the other 2 to 300 is going to be used to digest your food. When it comes to carbohydrates, if you consume 1,000 calories of carbohydrates, your body is actually going to be using roughly 850 to 900 calories of that carbohydrate, and only 100 to 150 is going to be used for the process of digestion. So if you want to lose weight, incorporating more protein-dense foods would be more beneficial since it has a higher thermic effect and you're not actually storing as many calories in your body as most of it is being used for digestion. Well, not most of it, but more is being used toward digestion than it would have been used if you were consuming the same calories from carbohydrates or fat. Now, when it comes to protein, just because you're not consuming an adequate amount, it doesn't mean that you should overdo it with the protein. Ideally, depending on what your goal is, there are specific levels that you want to hit when it comes to protein. The general guideline is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, but I'm not a big fan of that figure because it's an oversimplification of protein requirements. Depending on whether you are in a caloric surplus or caloric deficit, that is going to dictate how much protein you need to consume. Because if you end up being in a caloric surplus, your body's already going to be in a more anabolic state, so you don't need to consume as much protein. If you are in a caloric deficit, your body's going to be in a more catabolic state, which means you need to consume more protein. Ideally, the amount of protein that you should consume is going to come in a range, and that range is going to be anywhere from 0.8 to 1.5 of grams per pound of body weight. Now, where exactly should you follow in that range? Well, if you are trying to maintain your weight, 1 gram per pound is going to be a good starting point. You could start with that and then modify it as you need. If you are trying to gain weight, then you don't need to consume quite as much because if you're in a caloric surplus, as I just stated, you're going to be in a more anabolic state. And because you're in a more anabolic state, that means the level of muscle protein synthesis is going to exceed that of muscle protein breakdown. Whereas if you are in a caloric deficit, which is what you need to do if you want to lose weight, when you are in a caloric deficit, your muscle protein synthesis is going to be less than the level of muscle protein breakdown. So if muscle protein breakdown exceeds that of muscle protein synthesis, that is when you lose muscle. And when you lose muscle, your metabolic rate goes down. And when your metabolic rate goes down, it means you're not going to be burning as many calories throughout the day. So if you are in a caloric deficit, then ideally you would want to consume more than 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein. Ideally, it should be closer to that 1.5. This is also going to come down to how big of a deficit you are in. If you are in an extreme deficit, you would want to be closer to that 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. If you're in a small deficit, you could probably get away with 1.2, but those are some general guidelines when it comes to protein requirements and being in a calorie deficit. Another reason why you are not losing weight is going to be you are not getting enough physical activity. Now, when it comes to physical activity, this does not mean that you have to work out and be in the gym all day. It can be something as simple as performing some sporting events. So if there is an activity that you enjoy, you can do that. You can play soccer, you can play baseball, basketball, hockey. Find an activity that you enjoy if you don't enjoy weight training. If you enjoy weight training, then strength training is going to be a great way to build up some muscle, and when you build up some muscle, your metabolic rate is going to go up, because for every pound of muscle that you gain, that 1 pound is going to burn additional calories. Now, there is a myth that 1 pound of muscle is going to burn 50 calories. I already debunked that a few weeks ago, but what you should know is that muscle does burn calories. For every 1 pound of muscle, it's going to burn roughly 6 calories at rest. Yes, it's not a huge amount, but it is going to add up over the course of the day. And if you build muscle over the course of a year, those 6 calories per pound are going to add up over the course of that year. So while it isn't quite the 50 that people will lie to you and tell you that it burns, it is still an amount that it does burn, and it's going to be a lot more than fat. So by building up muscle, your metabolic rate will go up and it will help you to burn calories. And because it's going to help you burn more calories, it's going to make it easier for you to be in a caloric deficit. Another thing with regard to activity is activity does not just refer to sports and strength training. You're also going to burn calories through your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's going to be things like standing, like talking, like being on the computer, everything that you do, brushing your teeth, all these little movements are going to burn calories. So the more movement you do throughout the day, it is going to be beneficial. Which brings us to the next point, and that is going to be either having a sedentary job or lifestyle. If you have a job or lifestyle that requires you to sit down all day, you're not going to be burning as many calories through NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, because you're not moving as much. So some things that you could do to increase your NEAT calories burn is going to be things like standing instead of sitting. If you can be at a standing desk instead of sitting at a desk, that will burn more calories because you're engaging more muscles. When you're sitting, you don't have to engage your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings, your calves. Everything from your lower body is just dormant. Whereas when you're standing, your entire lower body, while it's not burning a ton of calories, it is going to burn more than sitting because you are engaging all of those muscles in your lower body. When you're sitting, you have to engage your core to sit upright, but aside from that, you're not really going to be burning too much. And if you have a back support and you're leaning on that back support, then your core isn't even going to be engaged. So sitting with a back support is going to burn the fewest amount of calories. Sitting upright without a back support will burn a little bit more. Standing at a standing desk will be optimal in terms of improving your NEAT calories if you have to be at a computer all day. Another reason why you're not losing weight is because you are stressed out. When you are stressed out, your body is going to secrete the hormone cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone, and if you have constantly high levels of cortisol circulating throughout the body, that can wreak havoc on your system. Cortisol is a hormone that raises insulin production, and insulin is a storage hormone. So what happens is when insulin is raised, insulin helps to regulate your metabolism of carbs, fats, and proteins. So if you throw off your body's production of cortisol and you constantly have elevated levels of cortisol, it's going to also raise your insulin levels, and that's going to make it easier for your body to store fat. Another reason why you're not losing weight is because you're not sleeping enough. When you don't get enough sleep, what's going to happen is you are going to decrease your resting metabolic rate. There have been studies that have shown that if you get only 4 hours sleep for 5 days in a row, your resting metabolic rate is going to decrease by 2.6%. Now that may not seem like a lot, 2.6%, but again, over the course of a year, that 2.6% is going to add up and it's going to make a big difference. When you do get enough sleep, after only 1 day of getting 12 hours of sleep, your resting metabolic rate will return back to normal. So if you can get good sleep on a regular basis, then that is going to make your resting metabolic rate increase, which is going to make it easier to be in a calorie deficit. And if you are in a calorie deficit, it will mean you will lose weight. Another thing with regard to sleep is when you don't get enough sleep, your body is going to secrete the hormone ghrelin. If you remember from just a couple of minutes ago, ghrelin is your hunger hormone. So if you are not getting enough sleep, when you wake up in the morning, ghrelin is going to be circulating through your body and it's going to make you crave really high calorie dense foods, and it's going to make you want to eat foods that are more unhealthy and higher in calories. Whereas if you get an adequate amount of sleep, you're not going to have the same issues with ghrelin circulating throughout the body, and it's going to make it easier for you to make better decisions in the morning when it comes to your nutrition. The better food choices that you make, the better your food choices are going to be throughout the day, because studies have shown that if you consume a healthy breakfast first thing in the morning, you are much more likely to make better food choices throughout the day. Whereas if you skip breakfast or get a poor night's sleep, the chances of you making poor food choices throughout the rest of the day increase dramatically. So you want to make sure that you're getting enough sleep, that way your resting metabolic rate is at an optimal level, and you're not producing a lot of ghrelin, which is going to cause you to either binge or make poor food choices. Another reason why you're not losing weight is because the temperature in your room is too hot. When the temperature in your room is too hot, 75 or higher, what's going to happen is your body is not going to be able to make as much brown fat. Brown fat is going to be the good fat. You have two types of fat. You have white fat and brown fat. Your white fat is typically stored around your abdominal region. Your brown fat is typically stored around the neck area. And what makes brown fat so great for you is brown fat has a higher oxygen consumption rate, and it also generates heat in the form of burning calories. So because it generates heat and burns more calories, having brown fat is going to make it easier when it comes to losing weight as opposed to having white fat. And by keeping it cooler in your room, then that will increase your body's production of brown fat, and it will be able to convert white fat into brown fat. Now, one of the other things with regard to this one, if you don't enjoy sleeping in a cold room, you don't have to do that. You can keep it warm in your room. There are other things that you can do. Some things that you could do when it's cold outside, go for a walk. You can try doing a cold shower. There are tons of other things that you can do to increase your body's production of brown fat and increase your body's ability to burn calories. Another thing would be trying a cryo chamber. There are plenty of things. If you immerse yourself in cold, whether it's cold weather, cold water, your body is going to produce more brown fat, and that is going to burn more calories. So by immersing yourself in the cold as often as you can or can tolerate, then that will increase your body's production of brown fat, which will make you burn more calories, which will make it easier to be in a caloric deficit, which will make it easier to lose weight. Those are just a few of the reasons why you're not losing weight, and none of them have anything to do with your body's natural metabolism. A lot of people that say, oh, the reason I'm not losing weight is because I have a slow metabolism. Well, yes, some people legit do have a slow metabolism, but the number of people that have a slow metabolism is very, very few when it comes to genetic factors. If you have a slow metabolism, you can control your metabolism by doing all the things that I just mentioned throughout this video. You can increase your metabolism by taking the advice I just said, and you could decrease your metabolism by doing the opposite of what I just said. Your metabolism is not fixed. You can increase and decrease it based off of lifestyle factors and also based off of your nutrition. So if you are eating well, exercising, doing things like getting enough sleep, minimizing stress levels, your metabolism is naturally going to be elevated. If you have a poor diet, if you go out on binges or you try to do these really strict calorie diets, what's going to happen is your body is going to be in a state of stress, and when you are stressed, it is going to make it easier for you to do things like binge. A lot of people, when they are stressed, they will use food as a coping mechanism, so you don't want to do things that are going to elevate your stress levels in the body, because if your stress is elevated, then it's going to make it a lot more difficult to lose weight. And another thing with regard to genetic factors, yes, there are some people where genetically they are going to have a slower metabolism, but even if you have a slow metabolism genetically, you can still do things to improve it. You are not limited by your genetics. You can improve your genetics by incorporating several lifestyle factors. If you are a person who has something like a thyroid issue, or if you were born with type 1 diabetes, that's only going to be a small percentage of the population. So unless you have some type of medical condition or you are on some type of medication that is making your metabolism go a little slower, for 99% of the population, the reason you are not losing weight is not because you have a slow metabolism. For 99% of the population, the reason you are losing weight is because you're not doing the things that I mentioned in this video. And if you do the things that I mentioned in this video, it's going to boost your metabolism and you're going to be able to lose weight. That pretty much covers it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.